right, let's do this. Let's start this horrible stock market day. Happy Friday, everyone, or is it? The market is pretty red. We're gonna talk about some economic data real quick, and then we're gonna get into some Bitcoin news. We also have some positive news coming from the SEC. We're gonna take a look at Bitcoin's chart and something that's been continuing to be a resistance for us, and then we're gonna look at something interesting on CleanSpark. But yeah, the market is pretty dang red today. A lot of the Dow stocks seem to be doing a little better. The NASDAQ and SPY are selling off a bit. And one thing that we saw today in terms of economic data was weaker services and weaker consumer sentiment. PMI came in at 50.4 in February, which is down from 52.7 in January, while service PMI fell to 49.7 from 52.9. As well as this data, we also got the University of Michigan Sentiment Index showing US consumer sentiment going down further, falling to a reading of 64.7 from 71.1, missing forecasts slightly higher at 64.8. Now we also have some interesting news coming from the SEC. The SEC decided to drop their dealer rule lawsuit appeal. Now this motion to dismiss, which was filed on February 19 in the US Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, this marks the end of the legal battle initiated by BA, or Blockchain Association, and CFAT, or Crypto Freedom Alliance in Texas. Now this motion, which was signed by SEC Senior Special Counsel Samuel B. Goldstein, states that both parties agreed to bear their own costs in the matter. Kristen Smith, the CEO of Blockchain Association, hailed this decision as a turning point for the SEC under their new leadership, stating, "It's a new day at the SEC following former Chair Gensler's crusade against crypto. Goodbye. Today's voluntary dismissal by the agency is welcome news." Now this news here might be shaking up crypto a bit as well. Bitcoin and Ether drop as crypto prices dip on report of a massive $1.5 billion Bybit hack. And this caused the Bybit exchange to see a $1.5 billion outflow of Ethereum. And this brought other implications. Because of the price dropping, this drop liquidated about $100 million worth of leveraged traders. Now I want to bring up a little tidbit from this article. I'll leave the whole thing down below, but I just wanted to highlight this one point. And this is the CME Bitcoin futures on the 1 month standpoint. And Vettel Lund, I probably butchered that name, research analyst at K33, pointed out that this 1 month Bitcoin futures has dropped to lows last witnessed in September of 2023, meaning before the beginning of a previous bull run. You can see that we did briefly dip to prices seen back in September. We did have a brief drop down here in January, right around the spot ETF hype, the drop after that. And also looking at Bitcoin CME's annualized basis, it also dropped to a low, a 4-month low. Ever since March of 2024, whenever this annualized basis drops below or down to the 6% range, Bitcoin has shown a higher time frame bottom within 2 weeks. Now looking at Bitcoin, as I showed you guys the other day, we did break this sort of a long downtrend, a multi-month downtrend we've been in. Okay, it hasn't been multi-month, but it started in January, right around January 20, and we broke out of it just the other day. However, we started following this ascending support, it just broke that. And I'll show you guys on the daily that we did find resistance again. After breaking over the 50 MA, it crushed back under it. We have seen this before where it tries to reclaim the 50 MA, isn't able to, continues to find it as resistance. This is one thing that's crucial to watch for, a break and hold over the 50 MA. For almost a full month now, it has been finding it as a resistance, occasionally breaking over to within basically the same day dropping back under it. We need a candle to break the 50 MA and the subsequent candle to hold that 50 MA, similar to this point here. Keep in mind, it has only been a month ago that Bitcoin broke a new all-time high. And here's something that's very interesting, is a month before that, we also broke an all-time high to then sell off for about a month before breaking a new all-time high. It has now been about a month. Come on, Bitcoin, let's break that all-time high again. Keep in mind, Bitcoin has had consolidation like this before. We saw this in 2024, a multi-month consolidation, if not downtrend, worries about Mt. Gox, doubts about the spot Bitcoin ETFs, until suddenly we break that previous all-time high and get on that next leg up. I do believe after this consolidation, we will go on that next leg up. Will this be the final run for Bitcoin this cycle, or will we have a run, pull back, and have a final run? It's anybody's guess. But I personally do not think the top is in. I do still think Bitcoin will top out somewhere around 150K. A 55% move from here isn't a lot for Bitcoin. Keep in mind, last time we consolidated, that multi-month consolidation with that Mt. Gox sphere, I didn't put it at the absolute bottom there. The bottom was 49K. But just going from when we started kind of seeing a clear direction upwards, starting at 60K when we started running, we got another 85% once we finally broke this, downtrend. Once we finally broke out of this long consolidation, I do think it's reasonable to expect at least another 50% move from Bitcoin. In the end, it's up to the market, but following the cycle, I think it's very, very doable. 250K, 300K, that's a little too optimistic. Those type of prices, in my opinion, keep you holding the bag after the cycle's over. Regardless of where Bitcoin goes throughout 2025, you do want to start taking profits as we get that euphoria, as we get that hype, that FOMO. Keep in mind, Google searches for Bitcoin is at a low. New retail is not present. Once new retail starts getting in, it sounds mean, but that's typically when you want to start taking profits. Now I want to show you guys CleanSpark. It has been pulling back. The Bitcoin miners have been dropping. It's very unfortunate. The Bitcoin miners are some posting profitability now, and yet we didn't really get a good reaction out of it. You could chalk this up to manipulation, as much as I hate to say it. You could chalk this up to Bitcoin pulling back over the last few months, or consolidating, not breaking out. You could contribute this to poor sentiment. However you want to cut it, CleanSpark has been in long consolidation, setting higher lows, but over the last 4 months or so, setting lower highs. Just looking back at the chart, looking at this, where are the buying opportunities? Where are the selling opportunities? Every time, on even the 1 hour, you can look at this at the 4 hour and it's even more accurate, so to speak. Every time we have dipped to oversold, it has typically been a good buying opportunity, especially on the short term. On the long term, not always. But on the short term, if you're looking for a short-term swing trade, a short-term, week-long trade, typically when you see an oversold RSI on CleanSpark, we do get a pop. Every time. From the 9s to 11 something, from the 9s to 12 something. And there's a lot of instances of divergences, so keep an eye on that. Bullish divergences galore. Back here we saw the price continuing down, but the RSI was rising. This marked a local bottom and we did get a little pop. Again here in January 2025, RSI divergence, price going down, RSI bottomed out already. We did get a pop. Again here, late December, RSI divergence, RSI going down, price starting to rise again. And soon after that, we did get a pop after some consolidation, some chop. But just look at these. Look for those divergences. That is typically a very good sign, especially for CleanSpark. But you see the price coming down. The RSI bottomed out down here, while the price bottomed out lower. That RSI divergence was a very good indicator that we are going higher, that reversal was happening. Again, I mean, there's so many of these. Keep an eye on them. There's another RSI divergence. RSI rising, price going sideways. And again, they are literally everywhere. Boom, another one. Here's the bottom for the RSI. That wasn't the bottom for the price. Divergence. Keep an eye out for a divergence. I think we are going to get one very soon, and I do think we are going to reverse. In the end, I do expect these Bitcoin miners, CleanSpark, Iron, and the like, BTBT, Riot, Mara, to post some consistent profitable quarters. Is the market really going to keep bringing their valuation down while their value of Bitcoin potentially rises throughout the cycle, while their cash flow rises throughout the cycle, while they're continuing to pull in cash rather than burning cash, rather than massive dilution? Keep an eye on these RSI divergences like I mentioned. These do tend to mark fantastic buying opportunities. Do you think what I showed you was the whole cycle? It might have looked like it, but this was the whole cycle. CleanSpark consistently hitting higher lows. CleanSpark, in hindsight, that Mt. Gox sphere that I mentioned, was still a fantastic buying opportunity. We are still higher than that price. Is it possible we revisit the 8 somehow? If the market wants to take it there, I guess. I do think in hindsight, these were fantastic times to buy, and so far I'm not wrong. We are not getting the 2023 prices of CleanSpark until next bear market. We are not getting another $3 CleanSpark until next bear market, if at all. We are not getting another $1.70 something CleanSpark. And as a side note, sentiment feels like these sub $2 prices. Sentiment feels like these $8 prices when people were ready to throw in the towel, when people were ready to give up, when new retail was buying the local tops, when retail was suddenly getting interested in these Bitcoin miners just for Wall Street to have them hold the bag. Follow the cycle and you'll do all right. Buying while no one wants it, in hindsight, has been fantastic. In hindsight, selling when everyone was suddenly bullish would have been very smart. When we get to these levels again, you want to sell some covered calls. You want to trim. When suddenly retail is interested in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, when the Google search trends are rising sky high again, when people are interested in them, that's when you want to be cautious. When everyone's talking crap, when everyone's worried about them, when everyone's ready to throw in the towel, yeah, that typically marks a bottom. We'll see if this plays out the same. To be fair, it has been a rough few months for the Bitcoin miners, and I understand the poor sentiment. I understand people getting irritated, their accounts continue going down. Think about how people felt that might have bought here at $7 for it to run down to 3, lose 50%. Some sold and gave up here, some bought. Some bought in here, sold down here, and gave up. Of course, it's easy to point these things out in hindsight. I do think this is going to be another instance. People are going to get irritated, give up, and sell before we go higher. Could I be wrong? Sure, I've been wrong in the past. But typically, just what we've been seeing, what we always tend to see, is when retail is ready to give up, soon after the Bitcoin miners suddenly run. Like I said, I could always be wrong, and over the next couple months, the Bitcoin miners sell off more. But what I have learned is it always seems to be darkest before dawn, as corny as that sounds. It always seems to be no end in sight, where suddenly we pick up, and we go from 8, for example, to 17 in the matter of a month. Or, you know, we lose 50% to then gain 600%. If you believe the Bitcoin miners are going to see some profitable quarters for the rest of this cycle, if you believe Bitcoin has not topped out, I don't see why the Bitcoin miners won't outperform Bitcoin from cycle low till top. If you don't think that's going to be the case, that's understandable. In the end, you guys have to do what you think is right. I'm just here to give you guys the news, give you my thoughts on the Bitcoin miners. I'm not here to provide hopium. I'm not here, despite people thinking that, to pump any of these stocks. I don't like pumping stocks for one, that's not my goal, but I definitely don't like pumping something when it's running. Typically, I talk about considering selling calls, considering trimming. When things are oversold, when things are fearful, that's when I want to tell you guys to buy. That's when I'm bullish. When there's fear out there, when everyone wants to give up, while it's sometimes hard to buy something in a downtrend, so far throughout this cycle, these pullbacks have been buying opportunities, and I don't think this is anything different. And this goes for all the Bitcoin miners. Especially those that are profitable, mostly those that are profitable. Let me reiterate that. But you know, in the end, it's a matter of Bitcoin finally breaking out of its range. The Bitcoin miners are probably going to get manipulated, continuing to get manipulated, as much as I hate to say it. As much as I hate mentioning that cliche or that excuse, I don't know how else to put it. Regardless of this manipulation or whatever you want to chalk it up to, I do believe once Bitcoin finally breaks out, once Bitcoin gets out of this range it's been in for about 90 days, once it finally breaks out of that, the Bitcoin miners will go on their next leg up, with many, in my opinion, testing their cycle highs of this cycle. But despite, or because of this horrible day, how are you guys feeling? Are you taking advantage, or are you ready to throw in the towel? Are you ready to call it quits? I understand both sides of the equation, and in the end, you have to do what's right with you. As for me, I'm very bullish on the Bitcoin miners, especially at these prices. Especially while they're posting profitability, especially while Bitcoin is continuing to consolidate. You don't want to necessarily be chasing, especially being that it'll probably be late in the cycle. We have got through by far the majority of this bull market. Bitcoin bottomed out in late 2022 and has been in basically a bull market ever since, with stints of consolidation, with short-term pullbacks, but overall a long-term bull run. And judging by most of these Bitcoin miners, it's the same story from 2022. Most of these Bitcoin miners have been in a bull run, consistently hitting higher lows. Now it's just a matter of finally breaking these lower highs. I do think it's coming. But in the end, you guys need to draw your own conclusions. Are you bullish or bearish on the Bitcoin miners? I could see some instances where the charts are bearish, especially on the short term. Many are under the 50 MA, for example. Many are stuck in descending resistances. But over the longer term, over the cycle, they have been in a good bull run. And the chart from cycle low till here so far speaks for itself. But anyways, thanks as always for watching, guys. I hope you have a good weekend. Despite sentiment lately, I am very bullish on the Bitcoin miners as a whole. And if Wall Street wants to pull them back, well, from a fundamental standpoint, they continue to improve, they continue to become more efficient, they continue to build up their Bitcoin balances, they continue to build up their cash, they continue to sell off, well, the fundamentals aren't lining up with the chart. But let me know how you guys are feeling down below. Are you feeling great about buying Bitcoin alts and the Bitcoin miners, or are you feeling very negative lately? Hopefully you guys can still enjoy your Friday and your weekend after this red day. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you soon.